Before you can improve your organization's security, you need an honest baseline of where you stand today. In this module, we'll turn NIST CSF 2.0 from an abstract document into a concrete current profile you can defend with real evidence. When we work with NIST CSF 2.0, we're not describing how security should work in theory. We're capturing how it actually works today. The core is a snapshot of now, grounded in logs, configurations, tickets, and real behavior. Every outcome you assess must be backed by evidence, not wishful thinking or policy fiction. In CSF terms, your current profile is your "you are here" marker. It reflects how outcomes are implemented in reality, not how they're supposed to work on paper. That baseline lets you run meaningful gap analysis against a target profile, instead of chasing random best practices. It also gives you a common language with leadership, specific risks tied to business services, and a defendable path from today's posture to your desired maturity. Profiles are not one-time documents. They're living views of how your CSF outcomes line up with reality. You start by scoping. Decide which systems, business units, or services you're profiling. Then you gather evidence, policies, control inventories, tool configurations, interviews, and existing audits. Finally, you translate what actually exists into CSF language, building an organizational profile that can later be compared, scored, and used for planning. When you build a CSF profile, the first major step is scoping. Decide what you're assessing: the whole organization, one business unit, or a single critical system. For a first run, smaller is usually better. You can always expand later. Make the boundaries explicit: what's in, what's out, and any key dependencies. Capture a few high-level facts and assumptions. This becomes your reference point for every decision that follows. To build a useful CSF profile, you need to know who actually holds the information you care about. Operations can tell you what systems exist, how they're configured, and what logs are available. Risk and compliance manage risk registers and obligations. HR tracks training, onboarding, and role changes. Legal understands regulatory drivers and constraints. Business owners know which processes are truly critical. Your role is to connect these silos so CSF decisions reflect how the organization really works. To build a credible CSF assessment, everything must tie back to real evidence. Policies show what should happen. Configurations show how systems are actually set up. Logs show what has really occurred over time. Interviews validate who does what in practice. Audits and prior assessments provide independent verification and highlight known gaps. Map each CSF 2.0 function and subcategory to one or more of these sources, so every claimed outcome is supported by something you can actually show. When you work with the CSF, your biggest enemy is optimism. Policies, slide decks, and hallway conversations only show intent. For the framework, what matters is what you can prove with evidence: logs, tickets, configurations, and reports. Use a simple rule. If you can't quickly show objective evidence, treat that outcome as not implemented yet. Once you have the raw content, you turn it into a usable profile matrix. Each row represents a single subcategory outcome, linked back to its function and category. For each one, you capture two things: the current implementation status and the concrete evidence that proves it. Think of this as your master crosswalk: CSF requirement, how well you meet it today, and where the proof lives. This structure makes gap analysis, reporting, and auditing much faster. A CSF profile also needs a simple, repeatable way to express status. A traffic light style scale, fully, partially, or not implemented, works well for fast communication with executives. A multi-level maturity scale gives you more nuance. You can show whether a practice is ad hoc, managed, or optimized. Either approach is acceptable. What matters most is defining clear criteria and applying them consistently across teams and assessments. Implementation tiers answer a different question than profiles. Profiles describe which outcomes you've chosen. Tiers describe how well you execute them. At Tier 1, you're mostly reactive, handling issues as they appear. Tier 2 is risk-informed. Decisions at least consider risk, but practices vary. Tier 3 means processes are documented, consistent, and usually followed. Tier 4 adds continuous feedback and adaptation. When you present results, pair what we do with how well we manage it. Here's how to interpret a protect example in practice. The outcome is access is audited, but your evidence shows it's only true for admins and the review is manual, so you mark it partially implemented. From there, you define improvements. Expand logging to all user types, automate report generation, and formalize review procedures. That turns a fragile control into a repeatable, auditable one. Inherited controls are outcomes your system relies on, but that someone else actually implements. A classic example is cloud provider physical security. In a CSF profile, you still account for those outcomes, but you don't pretend to operate the control. Instead, explicitly mark them as inherited, reference the provider's profile or control set, and link to their evidence. Your responsibility becomes validating the contract, reviewing their reports, and maintaining that traceability. When you build CSF profiles, common mistakes are about ambition, data, and consistency. Overscoping happens when you try to profile the whole enterprise at once. Instead, pick a pilot scope you can actually understand. Lack of evidence shows up as gut feel answers. Tie every status to concrete artifacts like configurations, logs, or policies. Watch for shadow IT by asking, "What's missing from this inventory?" And avoid inconsistent scoring by agreeing on one common scale and clear scoring criteria up front. You've now built a realistic, evidence-based snapshot of your CSF posture. That baseline isn't the end, it's the launch point. You'll use it to spot gaps, quantify risk, and decide what matters most. In the next module, we'll turn that snapshot into a target profile and a prioritized, actionable roadmap.